You are listening to Scott H. Silverman's Happy Hour, a podcast released on the first 3 Wednesdays of the month. Family crisis, relationship crisis, addiction crisis, no two crisis situations are the same. They vary by family, individual, and relationship. They can encompass complex family dynamics, emotional distress, anger issues, and entitlements, and often involve substance abuse. This podcast addresses these issues and others surrounding the addiction epidemic currently plaguing this country and the world. There is hope and help.
Are you stuck, scared, or unsure of what to do next? If a situation with a loved one, spouse, or even a child has started to spiral, possibly becoming dangerous or threatening, it's time to seek help. My name is Scott H. Silverman. I help families navigate crisis situations. I'm the person you turn to in order to get you and your loved ones unstuck.
Welcome back to the show. This is Michael Glenn Moore. You're listening to Scott H. Silverman's Happy Hour. Scott, I dodged a bullet last night. Hurricane Delta came through and all we got was rain, no wind. So the trees are still standing and my house is safe. And, you know, more than I can say for South Louisiana, they've really been battered. This is the second hurricane in 6 weeks for them down there. And a lot of them still had blue tarps on the roof and Lake Charles and so forth. So I know they're probably hurting this morning. So, I want everybody to think about them. So Scott, why don't you go ahead and introduce our guest introduce yourself first and then introduce our guest for today.
That's the sequence I'll follow. Well, I'm glad things are going well for you, Michael. I didn't sleep last night, worried that I might have to do this podcast this morning with our colleague Leonard all by myself. And I was stressed all about, how to record it, get it done, make sure I got the microphone set up. And then we got started this morning and we couldn't find Leonard, but then we found him. So Scott H. Silverman is my name. Happy Hour is our show. What we do is each week we try to bring what we consider to be some of the experts, thought leaders, and those who really care about helping others in the community find their way through addiction, access to treatment, working with the family, behavioral health issues, mental health issues, all the things that once we get them treated, we can live a happy, joyous, and free life. Today, I'm real excited. This fella, I'm going to call you a fella, because whenever I saw him, he was always surrounded with this group of people. I remember once I had to wait in line to say hello and give him a big hug at a meeting. And I thought, oh my goodness, who is this guy? Must be Superman. Anyway, Leonard Buschel is his name. I'm going to give you a couple of quick bullets and I'm going to let him talk. He's a creator, producer at Experience, Strength, and Hope Awards. He's an editor, publisher, and owner at the Addiction Recovery Ebulletin. It's probably maybe the largest, but one of the best electronic updates I know that I get. And he gathers information of what's going on in the recovery community, the addiction recovery community around the country and I guess the world, and has the level of connectivity to be able to bring it to us early, fast, and easy to read. It's also the director at Real Recovery Film Festival. We'll let him talk about that as well. Studied psychology at Naropa Institute. Also studied metaphysics. Is that rascality? That's what it looks like to me. Well, I'll let him say it. So with that, I'm going to introduce Leonard Buschel, and I'm going to let him tell you about himself and all the great things that he does. And I say great things because I think anybody who spends as much time as he appears to during waking hours to provide a platform for others to share their experience, strength, and hope, or just, they're my heroes. So with that, Leonard, it's all yours. Welcome to our show.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Scott. So is this show is called The Happy Hour?
Correct. It was chosen because that's when I spent my last couple of years of drinking and using was at happy hour, because my excuse was that being Jewish, buying a drink and getting another one free for some reason was a big draw. And there was a huge bathroom where I could go in and do my cocaine in between the cocktails and when the food came out. So happy hour was just kind of the spin. So yes, this is Scott H. Silverman's Happy Hour, and you're now officially a part of happy hour. So take it away. But we only talk for half an hour though. So it's a quick happy hour.
Okay. I never wanted to be happy for an hour. So it didn't appeal to me. if it was happy night, I'm all in.
Yeah.
Thank you for the beautiful introduction. Seems like I'm more busy than I think, but I am. It's incredible, especially during a pandemic, to be busier than before. It's extraordinary. The times we're living in are just, how fascinating is it? This will be in the history books in 100 years from now. You know, the decline and fall of American civilization. Hopefully, they'll be letting them study it in school. But I'm incredibly, it's funny, yesterday, no, it was today, I thought, maybe I wasn't an alcoholic after all, because I never lost the ability to control my drinking. I never tried to control my drinking or my drug use. I didn't go into a bar and accidentally get drunk. I knew I was going to have 6 shots of vodka or 6 shots of tequila. And I always make sure I had cash for a taxi or someone scheduled to pick me up and take me to heaven. So my point is that I also produce a series online once a month called Chasing the News, Stone Cold Sober. How to stay sober during a pandemic is the main topic. And we have very illustrious people. Our next show is October 22nd at 5 p.m. California time, 8 p.m. New York time, as if those are the only 2 places that should exist. And we have a lot of William Cope Moyers is our host every month. We have a number of artists. This episode is called The Rebels. It's filmmakers and artists and authors who seem, I mean, the thing I think they all have in common, none of them have a 9-to-5 job, but they're all very active and very successful and very sober. And I think this is an incredibly challenging time. The conversation is about Zoom rooms, you know, how they are part of your sobriety or not. It's a hard time. Luckily, I go to one what I call a real AA meeting every week, every Thursday in a park, just so I can be around my people. But anyway, so the show is called Chasing the News, Stone Cold Sober, and it's online, it's easy to find. And how that relates to anything, it seems to relate to everything. Every day that goes by, I get closer to living in terror. I think, Scott, our families, genetically know what it was like to be put on trains to detention camps anyway, I don't want to get there. I love being sober. Sobriety, oh my God, what a gift. It's 26 years ago, I drove to the Betty Ford Center. My goal was just to rest up for a month, just to sort of just get away from the drama of my life, of what it was. I also thought I was about to be arrested. I thought if I was at the Betty Ford Center, that when they came and arrested me, the judge would look kindly on the fact that I was in rehab. I did not go to get sober, but that's what happened when I was there. At the end of the month, I thought, wow, I just went a month without drinking or doing any drugs. That is incredible. That is something I didn't think was theoretically or practically, I didn't think it was possible to go 28 days without smoking a joint or sniffing some ecstasy or having vodka on the rocks or tequila with lime. I remember waking up in the morning and the glass of vodka with the melted ice would be there. And I remember the smell of that. No euphoric recall here, but just the smell of the lime and the melted ice with the tequila. I swear I was saying when I spoke at a meeting the other day, I said, what they don't tell you when you get clean and sober is that physically the drugs are out of your life, but you can still talk about them forever. And I think that's maybe what scared me, the idea of being sober. I thought, oh, that means I have to like negate the last 26 years of my life. It means I have to like forget about every day of my life for 26 years. Like I said, I got high once for 26 years. Smoked a joint when I was 17 and smoked my last joint on the way to Betty Ford. Every day. It wasn't I would take pot to Jamaica, okay, because the cab ride from the airport to my hotel was 2.5 hours. So I couldn't wait 2.5 hours to go score pot from a Jamaican. I needed my own. I took my own Coke to England. I took it everywhere. I couldn't live 5 hours without, if I got in my car and there wasn't a roach there, I'd be horrified. And then I'd have to like roll one. As everybody, how you can stop at a red light. I managed to roll a joint and light it up all while you're stopped at a red light, because you have to. This is how we manage our lives. My life was never unmanageable. I managed it like a drug addict. This is probably not even answering any question that you might have asked, but I love news. I'm a news junkie. I'm still a news junkie. And now I make a living off being a news junkie by publishing the Addiction Recovery Ebulletin for the last 8 years. It goes out to 17,000 people every Tuesday morning around 10:05 with 25 to 30 original news stories about addiction and recovery. Not necessarily essays, unless the essay was written in the New York Times or was broadcast on the BBC. But it's all stories that happened within the last 7 days. It's not, opinion pieces, and it's very stimulating. And I started it, believe it or not, which I don't see why you wouldn't believe it, when I was a drug counselor. When I worked for a number of years as a drug counselor, I remember my second day there, my boss said, okay, now it's time for you to run the group, 20 guys. And I said, okay, where's the book of group topics? And they laughed. There was no, So every issue of the e-bulletin, there's at least a couple stories on there that a lowly drug counselor can print out and use for group therapy. There's always something in there that's worth discussing. It's either educational or it's inspiring, and it's a conversation starter. So that's why I really started 8 years ago, just to give something. And now it's, it's got a life of its own. We do live because some people have decided to support us and put some ads on there. But I know that every day I'm getting a fix from the news. And we try not to be political, but COVID has intersected with the addiction world. More people drinking now, heavily more than ever, more people using. Imagine not being able to work from home, drink, smoke pot, nobody's watching you. You don't have to drive home so you can drink a little more. It's a horrible, horrible time, but luckily for people with a spiritual program or an AA program or some faith in humanity, which teeters from positive to not so positive. My big question is there more love in the world than there is hate? Yes. Is there more goodness in the world than there is badness? Yes. Have men been going to war since the ape in 2001 picked up the bone and started hitting his neighbors? Yes. Is war essential to the human experience? No. But then again, I can't prove that because there's no. Once I was sick in a hospital in Amsterdam, and the only book I had was H.G. Wells' The History of the World. It wasn't one of his fantastical novels. It was The History of the World. And it's the only book I had, and I'm like a compulsive reader. And it was from war to war to war. And at the time I was only 21 and I was still sort of naive and optimistic and believed in utopia and the Garden of Eden and all those wonderful imaginary places. But this book, The History of the World, was war to war to war. And I thought, wow, what is it? Is it really because we're afraid? Like, afraid we're going to lose what we have, or we're afraid we're not going to get what we want, and we're willing to kill for it, or let people die, as is currently happening, just because the leader of the free world is a compulsive sadist who loves seeing people die. Really, it's like his thing. If you read about him, it's his thing. But love your family, love your brother, love your sister, love yourself, love your pets. Love the guy who's driving slowly in front of you when you're in a hurry, if you can. And if you're in recovery, don't drink or use. Remember, that don't drink or use no matter what. That reminds me of Nancy Reagan, right? Just say no. And how everybody thought, oh, it's not just about saying no, but yet the saying, don't use or drink no matter what, no matter how much pain you're in, psychologically, physically, don't drink or use no matter what. What has kept me sober is the expression, it's easier to stay sober than it is to get sober. I never want to go through that first month again of not drinking and using drugs, because that was very unpleasant. It was difficult. It wasn't unpleasant. It was difficult. But I've never seen a program like NA and AA be more suited to narcissists. Really, it's fabulous. When you're in a rehab, all they want you to do is talk about yourself. All they want you to do is write about yourself. I loved it. So I know eventually I'm going to have to stop and take a breath. But if you don't give me like a timeout, I'm just going to free associate for the rest of the 2 hours. Is that okay? Okay. Yeah, good.
So, Leonard.
What?
You may want to, take a sip of tea or water. So I wanted to ask you, and thank you for sharing the way you do. Storytelling to me is a real art, and it's a pathway to the heart. And when you talk, it's very heartfelt, and I appreciate that. I think it's real important, especially for our audience that we're building on right now, and to hear about the work that you're doing in the recovery community, like I mentioned before, and hearing you articulate it though. So tell me, when did you first realize that you had addictive tendencies? You talked about, your drinking and your drugging, but when did you first, when did it first come upon you that, oh my, I might potentially have an issue? When was that?
It was sort of retroactive. I remember when the movie Sound of Music came out, and I was living in Atlantic City, New Jersey for the summer. I was alone, and I decided to go see The Sound of Music.
What year was that?
I don't want to say. Possibly 62. I was 12. I think I was around 12. And on the way there, I stopped at Planters Peanuts. Remember the Planters Peanuts? It's still out, right? And they were selling sunflower seeds without the shell. And growing up, I always had to take the seed out of the shell, spit it on the floor, one by one. But they sold it in bulk without the shell. So I took the bag, which I bought a bunch of for my friends and my family that I was going to go home to dinner with. But halfway through the movie, I realized there was almost no sunflower seeds left. I just kept eating them and eating them and eating them until I got sick. You know, I didn't throw up, but I had a stomach ache, and I couldn't stop myself because they gave me so much pleasure. You know, and the movie was giving me pleasure too, because I'm like a musical, you know, I love musicals. And so I'm enjoying the movie and I'm eating these peanuts, seeds, not peanuts, seeds, and I got sick. And when I was looking back, I thought, wow, that was my first experience with having too much of something that caused harm to me. I was a Coca-Cola addict at the same time, but I didn't notice how that was destroying my body because I was still young and had good, you know, good genes and good enzymes. But I drank like 6 Coca-Colas a day because I realized in retrospect that sugar is an amazing antidepressant. You know, when I'm eating or drinking sugar, all is right with the world. And I'm not alone. My mother's still alive. My father's still alive. My father died when I was 3 weeks old. But because of sugar, I didn't miss him that much. And the time I tried to give up sugar 10 years ago, I started crying because I realized how much I needed it to withstand the I don't want to say depression, the loneliness, the unknowingness of life itself. So that was my first addiction, was to sunflower seeds one day, Coca-Cola. When did I realize I had a trouble with drugs? I was driving over the San Francisco Golden Gate Bridge. I'd been doing Coke every day for 12 and a half years. Every day. I don't miss a day. You know, I never like did it all and didn't have any the next day. I made sure I had some the next day. Every day, 12 years. I guess I was using in moderation, but every day. And I'm driving over the Golden Gate Bridge and I have the vial in my hand, in my fingers, and I'm thinking, I'm going to throw it out the sunroof. I'm going to throw it into the San Francisco Bay. And I couldn't, because I realized if I threw it out, it meant I had a problem. And I had no way to handle the fact that now I was 13 years into a cocaine run. Like I said, I think I was only an addict for 1 year, because the first 12 years, every time I did a line or a spoon, I wanted to. I wanted to do Coke all the time, and I did it all the time. But it was in that 13th year that I did it even when I told myself I wasn't. Like I said, oh, I'm not going to do any Coke today until after dinner. I'm not going to do any Coke today until after lunch. But I would do it before that. And it scared me because I never had, because I realized it can't end well. I had a heart condition, asthma, already had some near-death experiences because of cocaine, but I couldn't stop doing it. And that frightened me. And then luckily, I realized that you could snort ecstasy. I was getting some very high-quality powdered MDMA, and I could snort that and sort of get the same kind of feeling. So I managed to quit cocaine on my own about 5 years before I went to rehab. But that was a frightening experience being so trapped. It's like I used to say, I had all my drugs like little puppets on a string. You know, and I could control the marijuana, I could control the Percodans, I could control the Valiums, I could control the vodka. But then eventually, it's like the drugs were up here and I was down here and I was the puppet and the drugs were controlling me. You know, I guess it happens gradually, sort of like going insane. If you do it slowly enough, you're not going to notice. So if you slowly become an addict, it just becomes a part of your life. So being addicted to Coke was very frightening. And it was anything uh, I do that makes me feel good, I want to do it all the time. So I don't know if that answers your question. Marijuana, I never thought I had a problem with. As long as I had some, I had no problem. And that was like 26 years of using every single day. Like I said, I took pot to Jamaica. I took pot, everywhere I ever went.
And now that it's legal in
Could not live
California,
without it.
now that it's legal
I
in
thought it was
California,
cool. I thought it was like, I didn't know I was self-medicating. I thought I was getting high.
right? And there's a difference. So tell me, because I have a couple questions I want to get to, and our time's ticking by quickly. How long ago did you start the Real Recovery Film Festival?
12 years ago. 12 years ago, in a beautiful theater in Los Angeles, we decided to show classic films about drugs and alcohol. Lost Weekend, Less Than Zero, what's the other one? Days of Wine and Roses, and then have conversations afterwards. Engage the entire audience. Sometimes we'd have a filmmaker there. The first film we ever showed was Permanent Midnight, written by Jerry Stahl, starring Ben Stiller. They came to the theater. They had like a great half-hour conversation after the movie. And from there, it grew into the longest recovery event in the country, 7 days. For the last 5 years, for the last 12 years, we do a week in LA and other cities, and including New York City. And now we have our next film festival this year is obviously streaming online. It starts November 6th of 2020. We have 85 films ready to go, all from submissions from all over the world. We don't rely on Hollywood anymore for films, although if they make something great like Rocket Man about Elton John last year, we show that. We show whatever good films Hollywood makes, but then we have dozens of films by independent filmmakers from all over. So it's the Real Recovery Film Festival 2020. You can log in for free and see any movie you want at any time. Obviously real film festivals are real time. This one is all the films will be made available. Just like Netflix, you go and see what you want, click on it, and watch it for free. So 12 years ago, we've had dozens and dozens of great films. We've had thousands of people come to the theater in New York and LA. And like I said, they're all worth talking about afterwards. There's no B movies in there. They're all really interesting. Even if they're only 8 minutes or 22 minutes, they're saying something about addiction or mental illness, social ills, homelessness. We cover everything. We cover everything that's wrong with the world with a very healthy dose of recovery also.
Right.
There are a lot of happy endings.
And most of it's, there is hope and help, and there's treatment available for it. So what inspired you to publish and edit the Addiction Recovery Ebulletin?
Well, like I said, the news junkie, seeing so many stories that I felt like sharing. I was never a bartender, but I would have liked that. I like sharing good things with people. So there were articles and stories that I thought people would learn from or appreciate or be amused by, that they could use in a clinical fashion, great cocktail party conversation. The internet, it's the most incredible thing that has come our way, makes Gutenberg look like a piker, I think. So I just like sharing news. I like sharing information. I'm a news and information addict. Or right. I have a JUD, a NUD, a news disorder, something, whatever they call it now.
A news use disorder.
Substance, yes, I have an NUD.
Right. It used to be an SUD, now it's an NUD. Very good. Under the DSM-5 new criteria. So last question for you, Leonard. If you had a magic wand right now, knowing what you know about the world of recovery, treatment, lack thereof, the stigma, the family issues, the untreated trauma, PTSD, whatever, areas of concern that we all have and that are intimately connected to helping others. If you had a magic wand, what would you want to tell people?
Oh, work your ass off to decriminalize all drugs, including heroin and cocaine. And until that happens, we're doomed. If someone could go in and buy a $40 bag of pure heroin at the CVS, they wouldn't be dying of fentanyl overdoses. If they knew what they were getting and they were taught how to use them properly, they'd be fine. And how many people, black, white, Hispanic, have ruined their lives because they got busted for a pound of marijuana and they do 10 years in jail, or crack cocaine. If it's true, it's funny. My manager came to my door yesterday. He says, there's a woman who's wandering around my building who's got dementia. And her boyfriend, he's like 75, he lets her go out because he doesn't notice because he drinks too much. And my first reaction wasn't, oh, he drinks too much because he has a disease. He drinks too much because he loves to drink. Okay, he drinks too much because he'd rather be intoxicated than sober. Anyway, getting back, legalize, do the Portugal model, legalize all drugs. Don't make people steal for them. Don't make people hurt other people to get the money to buy them. Make sure they're all pure and clean. And there'll be no more fentanyl deaths, I don't think. And there wouldn't be people wasting away in jail forever. Everybody's got to make a living. I said one of the greatest cultural improvements, revelations in America in the last 50 years has been the legalization of marijuana, at least in California, where there's as many pot pharmacies as there are Starbucks. Another drug is just legal, the caffeine thing, right? You can buy, people used to go to jail, they still go to jail, but you can buy it on the corner. No more, it's not medical marijuana, it's just marijuana. You can buy it and smoke it as much as you want. It might make you lethargic. It might ruin your life, but that's a personal choice. Just don't make people steal. Don't make people shoot up things they don't want to shoot up, and have, safe injection sites. It's barbaric that this guy downstairs drinking himself, to sleep every night. No one's going to come in and arrest him, but the guy next door doing the heroin, they're going to come and arrest him for nodding out. What's the difference? What's the difference? No difference. As long as you're not shooting it into someone else's arm. And like I said, people say, oh, I hate heroin. Heroin doesn't hate you. And if you had a broken leg and you're on a battlefield, you'd love that heroin because it would take away your pain. Heroin never jumped out of a bimble into a needle and stuck itself in your arm. Free will, Willie. Free Willie. Yes, I support the will.
That was a great film as well. Well, Leonard, thank you so much. I'm going to turn it back over to Michael, and he always likes to ask the questions that he knows I should have and I forgot. But Michael, back to you. What did we miss today? What are you thinking?
Scott. Thank you for allowing me to embarrass myself in such a big audience. I hope it's a big audience.
Well, it'll be up to you. You'll get the link and you'll help us make it a big audience. And then you'll find yourself sharing whatever you didn't embarrass yourself today. You told some great stories, and I know that will touch people, and I know you have strong opinions. But when it comes to reducing, the stigma around this disease, look, this 95% of the average persons who go through a 28-day program, according to science, relapse because they don't continue into treatment. This $40 billion industry has a 95% failure rate. Trust me, whatever you're going to add to it, whatever you're going to share about it, if it educates one person and they take the information and they move forward, we're going to create some change. But anyway, let me go back to Michael, because I know Michael usually has a great question he wants to ask or a comment he needs to make. Michael?
Yeah, I don't really have a question today, but I would like to make an observation. Leonard, if you were still doing the powdered ecstasy, more than likely it would be cut with fentanyl. So very fortunate that you weren't into that today, because you might be dead. And I want everybody to realize that when you're buying drugs off the street from whoever, the fentanyl problem is huge, and whatever you're buying, ecstasy, MDMA, whatever, could be cut with fentanyl, and that could end your life. So to be very careful with what you're doing. Okay.
It's savage capitalism. Take the profit motive out of drug use, and maybe some improvements will happen.
Okay, Leonard, do you have a quote for us today to see us out? Why don't you go ahead and give us that, and that will end our show.
Okay. And somehow I think this relates to recovery, the program. Alan Watts once said that you cannot force, for lack of a better word, satori or enlightenment or sobriety. You can't force enlightenment in through the window, but you can make sure the window is open.